being in the middle of the country, we sure love comfort food around here. And being a working cattle ranch, we also love food that can be portable. So I am gonna combine those two wonderful categories and make some comfort food that's really easy to take on the go. I'm gonna start with the ultimate comfort food, meatloaf, and I'm gonna turn it into sliders. It makes the best portable sandwich, perfect for those cowboy types in your life. I tore up some white bread, and honestly, the cheaper the bread, the better. And then I just poured in some whole milk, and that bread is gonna slowly start soaking that up. And then in goes the ground beef. And I'll kind of break this up when I put it in, so it'll be easier to mix together in just a sec. And the rest of the ingredients are just standard for my meatloaf, whether I'm making sliders or just a big old loaf. So I added some grated Parmesan cheese, a couple of eggs, which kind of helps everything bind together, a little bit of grated garlic. You don't want to overpower it, but the garlic, if you leave it out, will mean the meatloaf is really missing something special. And then some seasoned salt and plenty of black pepper. I think I've been telling you for about 15 years now that cowboys love black pepper, but it's so true. Some truths are just timeless. All right, I'm gonna smush it around a little bit more. And the final ingredient is some bright green parsley, just fresh chopped parsley. And then, you can go in with your hands if you want to, but I've got sleeves, I've got fingernails. So if the ground beef isn't very cold out of the fridge, it's real easy to mix it together. And honestly, I love meatloaf that has a little bit of texture left. So I like big chunks of bread here and there. So I'll stop just short of really smushing it all together. Alrighty, now to make it easier to make the sliders, I'm going to cook the meatloaf mixture in a mini loaf pan. I already greased it, and I'll get this mixture into each well. Okay, the meat mixture is in the neat little loaf pan, so I'm gonna make the glaze to go on top of the meatloaf, which in my humble opinion is just as important as the meatloaf itself. So it starts with ketchup, which is just a classic comfort glaze for meatloaf. And I'll add a little bit of yellow mustard, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, just to give it a little extra bite. And you gotta have the brown sugar, and that's what helps make the glaze super sticky. I've made meatloaves with different glazes. I've done sort of a barbecue sauce baked glaze. I've done kind of a chunky tomato glaze. Nothing tops the original meatloaf glaze made with bright red ketchup. Anytime I get meatloaf in a restaurant, I always check the glaze first. If it's bright red, I know it's gonna be good. Okay, now this is gonna be the glaze on top of the meatloaf, but I'm also going to make a spread out of this glaze when I build the sliders. So I'm gonna put a couple of spoonfuls into a separate bowl. And now I'll just divide this mixture among the 6 little meatloaf loaves. Meatloaf loaves. I love making the meatloaf in these small wells because when you make a great big loaf of meatloaf, sometimes it's a little tough to get the center fully cooked. You really have to pay attention, take the temperature. In this case, it's so easy to make sure they're fully cooked. All right, I'm gonna cook these in the oven at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes, and then I'll take the pan out and let them cool for 10. Okay, the meatloaves are all cooked and they've cooled a bit, and I'm just slicing the last one in 2. And as you can tell, they just wind up being perfect little meatloaf patties for the sliders. And before I build the sliders, I took some of the glaze out before I put it on the meatloaves, and I'm mixing it with mayonnaise, which results in basically meatloaf mayo, I'll call it. This was basically what I dipped my fries in when I was a freshman in college, and I've loved it ever since. All right, to build the sliders, I've got little just Hawaiian rolls, and I'll put a little meatloaf patty on first. And then on top of the meatloaf, I'm gonna put a little piece of cooked bacon, because usually when I make meatloaf, I wrap it in bacon strips before I bake it. So this is just a little bit of a different approach. And then I have a cute little lettuce leaf, put that on. And then you need to have a couple of pickles to go on top of the lettuce leaf. And then for the top bun, this is where the mayo mixture will come in. So I'll add about a spoonful and spread it out. You want to add enough that it just slightly drips out, but you don't want to add so much that it just inundates everything. And then this goes on. What a beautiful little slider. I'm gonna add a little pick just to keep everything together. As you can see, it's very helpful to do so. Okay, that's one built. Now I'm gonna do the same with all the rest. How ridiculously awesome did these look? Nothing better than a meatloaf slider. Now, to take these to the cowboys, I would just put a tint of foil over the top and just serve them right on the board on a tailgate of one of their trucks. Another thing you can do is wrap them individually in little plastic bags or paper bags. They're perfectly portable and outrageously delicious. My kind of recipe.